Before watching this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoy my good stories. The sun had barely risen over the quiet streets of Emily's suburban town, but the fear and heartbreak that had become her constant companions were already wide awake, pounding in her chest as she sat on the edge of the unmade bed, staring at the door through which her husband, Daniel, had stomped just hours ago, yelling insults that still rang in her ears, the harsh echoes of his anger mingling with the physical pain from the kicks he had delivered, leaving her bruised and trembling. And though she had begged him to stop, tears streaming down her face, he had sneered, telling her she was worthless, that he had no use for her anymore, and then, as though pushing her from his life physically would erase the memory of their marriage, he had thrown open the door, grabbed her bag, and with a final shove, sent her sprawling onto the porch before slamming the door in her face, leaving her standing there in the cold morning air, her heart breaking in ways she could never have imagined. And as she slowly gathered herself, clutching her bruised arm and the few belongings she could salvage, her mind raced with questions she had no answers to. How could the man she had loved, the father of their 2 children, turn into someone so cruel, someone capable of striking her and abandoning their family for another woman, someone who once promised to stand by her through sickness and health now treating her as though she were nothing? Emily's tears blurred her vision as she walked down the quiet street, the early morning mist clinging to her clothes, her thoughts spinning, her heart aching for the home she had lost, for the life she had built with Daniel, for the children she now had to protect without his support, and each step felt heavier than the last, the weight of betrayal pressing down on her like a physical force, making her knees weak. Yet beneath the fear and sorrow, a flicker of determination ignited, because she knew she had to survive, to find a place for herself and her children, to shield them from the full horror of the man who had once been their protector and now was their tormentor. And as she reached the small bus stop at the corner, she sat down, clutching her knees, shivering not only from the cold but from the realization that life as she knew it had ended. And yet, even in that shivering despair, she began to plan, silently whispering to herself, "I will not let him win. I will survive. My children and I will find safety." And as the hours passed, she walked from street to street, looking for a place to rest, a friend, a shelter, anything that could provide a sliver of stability, while memories of Daniel's cruel laughter and the sharp sting of his kicks replayed endlessly in her mind, making her flinch at every step. And yet she pressed forward, clutching her children's school photos and favorite toys she had managed to carry, the fragile connections to a past life that had been violently ripped from her. And as night fell, Emily found herself in a small park, rain beginning to drizzle, shivering with exhaustion and pain, hugging her knees and whispering to the children, "We'll be okay, I promise," while inside her, grief battled with the first sparks of strength, the motherly instinct to protect and fight awakening in ways she had never imagined. And as the cold night deepened, she finally spotted a light in the distance, a small church with open doors and a soft glow, and staggering toward it, bruised, battered, and broken, she stepped inside, greeted by strangers who offered blankets, hot drinks, and quiet words of encouragement. And as she tucked her children into the narrow cots provided, she pressed their small hands to her face and whispered, "I will keep you safe. I will find a way." And in that moment, Emily realized that even though her world had been shattered by violence, betrayal, and cruelty, the smallest spark of hope could survive in the darkness, and that spark would guide her, her children, and her heart toward a future she would fight to reclaim, no matter how long the road, no matter how many nights of tears. And though the nights would be long and filled with sobs that no one would hear, Emily's resolve hardened like steel. She would survive, she would protect her children, and she would rise from the ashes of a life destroyed by a man who had once promised forever. And in that cold, dimly lit church shelter, as she held her children close, she vowed to herself that their story would not end in heartbreak, but in courage, love, and resilience that no cruelty could ever extinguish. The next morning, Emily woke to the faint light filtering through the thin curtains of the church shelter, her body aching from the kicks and bruises Daniel had left her with. And though exhaustion threatened to pull her back into despair, she knew she had to move, had to find some way to provide for her children, to give them even a fragment of the security they had lost. And as she quietly woke Ethan and Lily, her 2 children, she forced a calmness into her voice, "Time to get up, sweethearts," even though her heart pounded with fear and uncertainty. And as they ate the meager breakfast offered at the shelter, she made mental lists of possible jobs, shelters, and helplines she could call, knowing that the clock was ticking and every moment of delay could put them at greater risk, and stepping outside into the cold, damp morning, she wrapped her jacket tightly around her body and held their small hands in hers, walking block after block through streets that suddenly seemed unfamiliar and threatening, searching for a way to start over, any job that would bring money for food, clothing, and a safe place to sleep, and though the stares of strangers, the noise of traffic, and the chill of the wind made her shiver both physically and emotionally, she refused to let herself crumble, because her children's eyes, wide with trust and innocence, depended on her strength. She went from store to store, diner to diner, asking if they were hiring, her voice soft but firm, sometimes met with polite rejections, other times with skeptical glances, and each no felt like a punch to her already bruised heart, yet she refused to give up, telling herself, "We can survive this. I have to survive this for them," and as the afternoon sun fell low, she stumbled upon a small cafe with a help wanted sign in the window, hesitated, then walked inside, introducing herself to the manager, a kind-looking woman named Carla, who asked her experience and skills, and Emily, though weary and trembling, answered honestly, "I'll do anything, I just need a chance to take care of my children." And Carla studied her for a moment, then nodded, "We can use a hard worker like you. Start tomorrow morning. It won't pay much, but it's a start," and Emily felt a small glimmer of relief, tears threatening to spill, but she swallowed them, focusing on the task ahead, the responsibility for two small lives depending entirely on her determination. That night, as they returned to the shelter, Emily carried bags of canned food and small essentials she had managed to purchase, hugging her children close and whispering, "We're safe for tonight, that's what matters," while inside, the memories of Daniel's cruelty haunted her, the way he had kicked her, screamed at her, and hurled her out of the home they had shared, promising forever but delivering only pain, yet she refused to let that memory destroy the tiny courage growing within her, and as she tucked Ethan and Lily into their cots, she held their hands in hers, listening to their quiet breathing, whispering again, "I promise, I will protect you, I will keep you safe," feeling the weight of responsibility crush her, but also ignite an unshakable determination, and as she lay on the narrow cot beside them, staring at the flickering light above, she made a vow, no matter how long the path, no matter how many tears she shed, she would not give up, she would not surrender to despair, she would find work, a home, and rebuild their lives, and she knew that while the nights would be long and full of doubt, the love for her children, the need to see them safe and happy, would carry her through every obstacle, every hunger, every painful memory, and with that thought, she closed her eyes, letting exhaustion and determination intertwine, ready to face the uncertain dawn of the next day, because survival was no longer optional, it was her duty, her fight, and her promise to the children who looked to her for hope and safety, and deep inside, she felt a spark of courage, a seed of resilience, the first glimmer of the life she would forge from the ruins of betrayal, abuse, and abandonment, a life where she and her children could stand again, together, unbroken and unafraid. Days turned into weeks, and Emily Miller began to understand the harsh rhythm of survival, waking before sunrise to prepare breakfast for Ethan and Lily, packing their small lunches carefully with what little money she had, and rushing to her shifts at the cafe where Carla had given her a chance, her body aching from long hours on her feet, her hands raw from washing dishes, and yet, every tired step, every aching muscle, became a testament to her determination, because she knew that no amount of fatigue could matter more than the safety and well-being of her children. She learned to stretch every dollar, counting pennies for groceries, school supplies, and blankets for cold nights, sometimes going without food herself to ensure Ethan and Lily ate, and though the nights were filled with exhaustion and tears that she hid from her children, she whispered to herself softly, "I will not let him take everything from us, I will survive, I will protect my children," and slowly, small victories began to appear, Ethan proudly receiving a gold star for his homework, Lily drawing colorful suns and hearts to hang on the walls of their tiny apartment, Carla complimenting her diligence and care at work, and even a few neighbors smiling kindly when she carried bags of groceries, reminding her that not all the world was cruel, that kindness still existed. Emily also found solace in small routines, story time at night with the children, Sunday walks in the nearby park where the sunlight warmed their faces, quiet moments where she could hold their hands and let them laugh freely without fear, and in those moments, she realized that even though Daniel's betrayal had shattered their past, she could create a present filled with love and stability, teaching her children resilience, courage, and hope through her own example, showing them that strength was not about never falling, but about standing up, even when the world tried to push you down. And as weeks passed, she began to make tentative plans for the future, looking at better job opportunities, saving a little extra money each week, imagining a small home where her children could grow safely, and even daring to dream that one day they could laugh freely without shadows of fear or memory of Daniel's cruelty hanging over them. Each night, as she tucked Ethan and Lily into bed, reading bedtime stories in soft, calming voices, she felt a mixture of exhaustion, sorrow, and profound pride, knowing that she was doing what many thought impossible, turning heartbreak into strength, violence into resilience, and betrayal into the determination to create a life of love, safety, and hope for her children. And though the memory of Daniel's cruelty never fully left her, the sting of his kicks, the shouting, the humiliation, it became fuel rather than chains, pushing her to rise each morning, face the world, and fight for a future that belonged solely to her and her children, a future built not on what was lost, but on what she could still create. And in those quiet moments, alone in their tiny apartment, Emily Miller realized something profound, that survival was not enough, that she could thrive, and that no matter what storms life sent her way, the love for her children and the strength she had unearthed in herself would guide them through every hardship, making her not just a mother who survived, but a mother who conquered despair. And in that realization, a small smile crossed her tired face, because she knew that the best was yet to come. Months passed, and Emily Miller began to feel the first glimmers of stability in the life she was painstakingly building, waking each morning before sunrise to prepare breakfast for Ethan and Lily, carefully packing their lunches and sending them off to school with hugs and encouragement, while she herself hurried to her shifts at the cafe, each day exhausting yet filled with small victories that reminded her she was moving forward. And though her body ached from long hours and her heart still carried the scars of Daniel's betrayal and violence, she felt a quiet pride in knowing she was keeping her children safe, fed, and loved, teaching them resilience by example, showing them that life could be rebuilt even after it had been shattered. She began to notice small acts of kindness around her, Carla, her manager, offering words of encouragement and extra shifts, neighbors sharing advice, and other single mothers in her community becoming allies and friends. And Emily found herself sharing her story cautiously, the first time in months that she allowed her voice to speak the pain and fear she had endured. Yet she discovered relief in being heard, validation in the nods of understanding, and a sense of community that reminded her she was not alone. Slowly, Emily allowed herself small joys, walks in the park with her children, afternoons spent reading in the local library, and evenings where Ethan and Lily could play freely without fear. And in those moments, her heart softened, the constant ache of betrayal giving way to hope, and she began to make plans for the future, dreaming of a small apartment of their own, better work opportunities, and even enrolling in evening classes to improve her skills and independence, daring to imagine a life where she would not just survive but thrive. And although memories of Daniel's cruelty occasionally returned, the shouts, the kicks, the humiliation, Emily used them as reminders of her strength, proof of the darkness she had endured and survived. And as she tucked her children into bed each night, listening to their soft breathing, she whispered, "We are safe, we are strong, and every day we grow stronger," feeling a quiet power in her heart, a sense that no matter what life threw at them, they could face it together. And in the weeks that followed, Emily's confidence grew, she smiled more freely, laughed quietly with her children, and even began to reconnect with parts of herself that had been buried under fear and grief, a love for reading, small creative projects, and the courage to dream again. And as she looked out over the city lights from their small balcony one evening, holding Ethan and Lily close, she realized with profound clarity that while the past could never be erased, it did not define them, that they had survived horrors many could not imagine, and that from the ashes of violence, betrayal, and abandonment, Emily Miller was forging a life of love, resilience, and unbreakable strength, one day at a time, teaching her children that even when the world turns cruel, a mother's courage and love could light the way. And in that moment, watching their faces bathed in the golden glow of sunset, she felt a peace she had not known in years, knowing that the life they were building together was not just about survival, it was about hope, triumph, and the quiet, unwavering joy of being together, safe and loved. Years had passed since Daniel had abandoned Emily, leaving her bruised, beaten, and thrown out of the home they had shared, and though the early days had been filled with fear, hunger, and heartbreak, Emily Miller had transformed her pain into quiet strength, working tirelessly, saving every penny, and building a life of safety, love, and stability for her children, Ethan and Lily, who had grown into resilient, happy, and confident kids under her unwavering care. She had moved into a small but cozy apartment, decorated it with their drawings, photos, and small mementos of triumph, and created routines that gave them a sense of security: Saturday breakfasts together, story time each night, walks in the park where their laughter could echo freely, and evenings where she tucked them into bed whispering, "We are safe, we are loved, and we will always have each other." Feeling their small hands in hers and knowing that no violence, betrayal, or cruelty could ever take that love away, Emily had also grown personally, taking evening classes to improve her career prospects, making friends who supported and encouraged her, and discovering a self-worth that Daniel's abuse had tried to destroy, realizing that survival was not enough, and that she could, and would, thrive. And as she watched her children achieve milestones, Ethan receiving awards at school, Lily's bright smile lighting up every room, tears of pride and joy streamed down her cheeks, not for the life she had lost, but for the one she had built through courage, perseverance, and unconditional love. And though memories of Daniel's cruelty occasionally flickered in her mind, the kicks, the shouting, the betrayal, they no longer had power over her, serving only as reminders of the strength she had found within herself, a strength that could not be shaken. And one quiet evening, as the sunset bathed their small home in warm golden light, Emily held her children close, whispering softly, "We made it. We are safe. We are home." And for the first time in years, she smiled freely, her heart light, her spirit unbroken, and she knew that while the past could never be erased, it no longer defined them, because Emily Miller, a mother who had been abandoned, beaten, and left with nothing, had not only survived, she had built a life of dignity, joy, and unbreakable love, a life where she and her children could move forward, free, strong, and forever connected, a true testament to the power of resilience, courage, and a mother's unwavering devotion.